All right, building an ADU in the Bay Area. Like that there are so many beautiful companies out there that are it's kind of just make ready products where you can add value to either an existing single family home or in this case maybe even a plot of commercial real estate. That is definitely one of my dreams and Ian Cruz is doing just that. He is a multifamily investor. He is works in venture capital and he's also probably the fittest guest we've ever had on the show. So I'm super excited to bring him on coming up next. Welcome to the Cash Flow Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Josh Baldovino, and on this show, you can join us live as we interview investors and share how they are increasing their cash flow. So grab a drink and let's get into it. Ian, man, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Josh?
Good. Well, thanks for coming on. You are literally like kind of living my dream right now. I promise you. I know we were talking about this before in kind of the green room, but building an ADU, beautiful ADUs, by the way, in the Bay, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, it's a great project. We're working with a great company to add this ADU onto our multifamily property. So I'm excited to see how it turns out.
And by the way, this is not sponsored for anyone listening. This is just literally, if you're scrolling on Instagram and you're looking at random things to just build on pieces of land, it's hard not to come by some of these prefab companies. And if you're anything like me, you've probably explored that a little bit. So we'll dive into kind of what he's doing, what he's thinking about in terms of the numbers, how that could actually generate returns. But just for context for the viewers, Ian, what's the quick background story? Who are you and how did you get into real estate?
Yeah, sure. My name's Ian. By day, I work a finance role, a manager of finance at a venture capital firm. So I prepare financial statements. I've got my CPA. So I have that numbers type of background. By night, something that's interesting is I volunteer at a nonprofit boxing organization. So my whole social media is kind of promoting that nonprofit gym that I volunteer at. I coach a number of amateur and professional athletes as well. So that's something that I do for fun. And then additionally, I invest in real estate. I've been going to a lot of Joshua's real estate meetups, as well as a number of other ones in the Bay Area, and talking about various scenarios, because it's always at these meetups where these ideas come about and you brainstorm. People have different experiences with ADUs, with 1031 exchanges, and before you know it, you don't know what you don't know. And then at these meetups, a lot of incredible things can happen.
Totally. I think you brought up a good point. But one of the things that stop a lot of people is they want the answer to every single question before they take action. But it's almost impossible to even think of the question before you even know what's wrong and what the problem is. So there's definitely ways to figuring it out along the way. And I think you've done a fantastic job of being smart in that kind of approach, but also just figuring it out and making it work for whatever you're trying to do. So let's dive right into it real quick. You're investing in a couple different markets in a few different ways. What markets are you interested in?
Bay Area, because that's where I live, the market that I know. We're house hacking a duplex just so that we can get that low interest rate, and we're renting out the other side as a furnished housing, as a medium term rental. Through family, helping out with a 1031 exchange into multifamily as well to add the ADU. So that's a pretty interesting and unique transaction that I'm excited to talk about. And then separately, some small, very small commercial multifamily in Cincinnati to get my feet wet in that market before I try to expand there as well.
Yeah, I know we actually first connected because you were interested in Cincinnati. I was actually under contract for a fourplex in Cincinnati at that time. That deal ended up falling through, but I always thought it was the most randomest thing that, this guy from the Bay Area would be so into the Bengals, and I just wasn't sure why.
It started from childhood, but hey, the rule about investing in places that you know is a huge rule that I want to stick with. I think Columbus is a great market. When you look at the three C's, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, they're going to have their differences. They're all great markets to get into. But the fact that I started a meetup and met all these people from Cincinnati, even though it's not a meetup about real estate, it was a meetup about the Bengals. But I started this huge fan club and met all these people who grew up there, right? And we used to go there every year. I mean, we still do. So being able to know the market that way and talk to people, and when I interviewed a property manager, I noticed, hey, we have mutual connections, and they're not through real estate. They're not
Hmm.
business associates or people referring people for the sake of, just not in a transactional way. It's like, oh, I know this person. My wife knows his sister very well, grew up, went to middle school with this person. So it was really cool. And before I know it, I'm all in on Cincinnati.
That is a unique pro tip because a lot of times people think it's just business, right? I'm going to get this relationship. I'm going to, find these vendors, call them. But a lot of people don't think about how to actually build that rapport. And so the fact that you are so invested in the Bengals, although go Niners, you can let us know in the comments. Are you Niners or are you Bengals? I think I know what the chat may be.
Man, didn't get flooded.
um, but you're actually building real relationships, just aside from the business side, which only helps the relationship. So kudos to you, man. Well, let's just dive right into this ADU because gosh, like I am again, super jealous. So Adobu is who you end up using.
Yep.
I guess real quick, how did this idea even spark for you?
Yeah. So these things were set in motion for a long, long time. So I also want to give a background on the entire the transaction in its entirety and talk about my mom's situation. She's, since growing up, I've been fortunate enough to watch her make some real estate investments, both good and bad. We were impacted by 2008. We learned from those. I've had to piece. That's kind of what got my brain churning and me wanting to learn more about real estate. When I was a kid, my dad had me read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I was fortunate to read that at a young age. And I was a teenager. I thought it was like, whatever. I don't really care about this. I want to play video games or, I didn't care about it. But that 1031, he does mention 1031s in the book. So that stuck with me, right? That knowing that that's an option, that stuck with me in the back of my mind. And, I had a friend right when I finished college, someone that I know was ranting about how much in taxes they had to pay when they sold their property. And I'm like, there was something that I learned a long time ago that you could do to defer those taxes. You don't need to pay that because you're paying taxes when you sell property, investment property. It's not just the capital gains. There's also depreciation recapture, right? That's a huge bill. Whereas through a 1031 exchange, that rolls into the next property. It reduces the cost basis of your replacement property, but you're not paying the taxes on that property.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about everything for my mom for a long time, and she's owned this property for over in Almaden, so it's a nice property. And she's sitting on some equity, but it had a horrible loan. There was all sorts of stuff that went on in 2008. WAMU went under. The loan was sold to Chase, so I couldn't find any of the documents, the original documents. It took a while for me to figure out, but it was a 40-year loan with a balloon at the end, so she's basically not paying any principal down. And I was thinking, like, how did this happen? This is again me just trying to figure out what happened here. And I kept coming to the same conclusion. We needed to 1031 this and 1031 it into something that generates a higher cash flow, right? On one hand, because of Prop 13, she has a lower property tax basis on this property, but on the flip side, that more than gets accounted for when you switch into multifamily, 4 units, 5 units, whatever.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about that. So 1031 exchange was the biggest thing that we wanted to do with this property. And my mom, so ever since I left for college, she actually rented out that home, which I lived in for a while. It was walking distance to Leland High. I went there for a bit. And my mom has rented ever since. She's moved around. She's rented at Santana Row. She's rented in various places and just kept that as rental property.
Yeah.
Which it's good, right? It's sitting on appreciation, but we were waiting for this certain kind of inflection point to hit where it would make sense to swap it out, which was more recently. And then every now and then my mom goes through the exercise where she sees a place that she loves. And in this instance, it was the Bellaterra new build condominiums over in Los Gatos. She falls in love with it. She views it. She falls in love with it and says, I need to sell this house, pay all the taxes, and buy this in cash. right? And if you're a real estate investor, you don't think that way. And my mom has done a number of things in the real estate investing kind of mind frame of knowing that that's not the best idea of what to do with your investment property. But every now and then she goes through these phases where she wants to do that. And if you think about it, a lot of people who are sitting on equity over in the Bay Area, eventually they sell their property, they pay the tax, they pay a lot, they get a bunch of it deferred, the first 250K or 500K of exclusion if they live in it, and then they move to Florida. I mean, how many people did that at the start of the pandemic, right? But my mom goes through these things, and I always have to talk her like, hey, this is not the plan. We are going to 1031 this property. And by December of this year, we saw the appraised value was pretty high. Obviously, things had gone up quite a bit since 2020. The numbers looked a lot different, and we're like, okay, we're all in. We're going to 1031 into multifamily, probably commercial multifamily, and then we'll have the whole exercise of deciding on a market. That's option number one. And then deciding how much leverage you want to use versus how much cash flow you want, right? What's your loan to value? If you're in the Bay Area, your loan to value is going to be low, right? You're putting at least 50% down to even qualify for the loan, right? So pretty crazy, right? But at the same time, people still invest in the Bay Area because of appreciation. And for my mom's stage of life, she needed something that she could see and something a little bit less risky than going into a market that she doesn't know. And then for us, our criteria in terms of purchase price was we're looking for the best deal and the least headache, right? We're looking to make sure that things you know, is the best for my mom at her stage of life right now, right? I'm not going into some crazy value add project, and we're finding all these good deals number wise or off market properties that we had to rehab or things like that. I saw one, the building was built in the 1890s and it had a little studio in the bottom that was not shown in the advertising materials. So it's like, you can convert this to another room, but it's like, it's also a lot of headache, right?
You guys were looking for something that was cleaner. This was obviously the first bigger project that you'd be managing for her and that you'd be really taking on and taking ownership of. And so, and she also wanted that safety net of, could I feel, see, and touch it? Okay, so you guys sold that property and you guys bought this lot in Santa Clara. And from that point, like, I guess break down that lot and when did that ADU concept come in?
Yeah, so a little background on 1031s. There are a number of different kinds of 1031 exchanges. And the one that I'm going to discuss is it's known as a build to suit exchange or an improvement 1031 exchange. So initially it used to be only simultaneous exchanges, meaning you had to sell a property and buy a property on the same exact day, which sounds extremely impossible because it is. And then there are delayed exchanges where you have these windows. You have 45 days to identify a property and 180 days to close on that property. You have 45 days to identify 3 properties of unlimited total value, or there are these other rules if you want to identify more properties. Not to get into the specifics of that, but a lot of people use the delayed 1031 exchange. There are construction exchanges. There are reverse exchanges.
So which one did you guys do?
Improvement exchange. So the easiest way, when I talk to lenders, when I talk to the county, because there's some subsidized housing, when I have to explain to people or insurance, whoever, what type of transaction is, I really compare it to a reverse exchange because that's what more people have heard about. But in general, so the way an improvement exchange works is my mom, when you sell your relinquished property, you can't, in general, with a 1031 exchange, you can never touch the funds, and that money has to go straight into the next property. So you use a 1031 exchange agent to hold on to the funds while you're identifying a property, and then they disperse the cash to buy the property for you. And at that point, transaction is done. Right? With a 1031 improvement exchange, what happens is, even though you want to have a contract to purchase a property, but what ends up happening is that property may need some renovation, some construction, things like that. So you cannot close out the transaction right then. What actually happens is the 1031 exchange company forms an LLC for you, and they're actually the owner, and they make the buyer the managing member of the LLC, but they technically aren't on title. So they form the LLC for in this instance, and then put her as the managing member, and then authorize her to collect rent, authorize her to say which disbursements for which improvements need to be made, just authorize every dollar that goes into that transaction. And then hopefully by the end of the transaction, you've used up all of your cash that you've been holding back for the renovation, and then they transfer the title to you.
Okay.
So that's what an improvement exchange is. And
so you want to do that in Santa Clara?
Yeah, I'm going to do it in Santa Clara because the purchase price. So I'll add this. An improvement exchange still needs to follow the original timeline of a 1031. So you're on the clock the moment you sell your relinquished property for 180 days, right? So that's a pretty tight timeline, especially if you were trying to do a stick-built ADU, which is why we didn't do that. And then not only that, it's not from the time, one thing that people might get mixed up, it's not from the time that you identify or close on your replacement property. You don't have a new 180 days. The clock is still ticking, right? Yeah. So we kind of dragged our feet on, because I had some inkling of where the market was heading back in April. I was like, I still want to wait. So some people get nervous and put in offers immediately, right when their 45-day window starts. But I was still in a wait and see approach.
Yeah.
And then we submitted our identified properties literally on day 45. we knew we were gonna get, and we got our offer accepted at that point. And then I wanted to make sure we knew what to list as backup options as well. Yeah. But we definitely cut it close. But then that leaves you, if you take a month and a half out of that 6 months, then all of a sudden you have 4.5 months to put an ADU onto the property if that's what you choose, right? So
hold on. So let me pause there. So you went this prefab ADU route because of the 1031 stipulations. You only had X amount of time to then add that extra unit. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
It's definitely part of the conversation if we want to use 1031 funds. And if we were to decide on doing it and having a 6-month timeline, I think you still have to go prefab no matter what.
Gotcha.
For if you're trying to do an improvement exchange for a 1031. Because stick-built ADUs, you're going to take at least 12 months, 12 to 18 months. It is a little cheaper, but there's more customization. But the prefab ADUs, we toured a few different prefab ADUs, looked into the companies. We really, really liked Adobu. They actually have a showroom. I want to say it's in San Mateo. So we went there and took a look at some of the ADUs there. And we really liked what we were seeing there. So
all right, so you're touring me now on this. So now I wanted to hear, like, you picked Adobu for a specific reason. I definitely want to hear why. But I guess, which unit are you getting? I got a product, right?
Yeah, so we're going with an Adobu 1, so the 1-bedroom.
Okay. And so they have a showroom. Maybe am I already on it? Maybe I'm already on it. Okay. Full-size bedroom. And I guess how many different 1-bedrooms? Oh, there's a 3D tour. Look at that. How many different options are there?
So there's a lot of there are options for customization of the property. The floor plan is going to remain the same, but whether you want a deck or not, whether you want, that in the back right there, those cabinets, things like that are all customizable. Part of the reason why this is such a quick process is because California in general supports building ADUs, and then San Jose has a list of approved vendors and approved plans for ADU. So if you go on the San Jose website, you can see who those companies are, and Adobu is one of them. So we didn't do this. If this was in San Jose, we could have this ADU up very, very quickly. So these ADUs are built off-site.
Okay.
Over, I want to say in Oakland, but I don't quote me on that. But they're
Yeah.
built off-site, and so you can place the order, and like when we were saying we want an ADU, they told us the 2 bedrooms are available right now. If you want a 2-bedroom right now, all that matters is the permitting process.
Okay.
We waited a little bit for the 1-bedroom. So as far as the permitting process goes in San Jose, they have a meeting every Tuesday, and if everything checks out, you can be approved that Tuesday, right?
Wow.
And then as far as them getting that ADU, if it's already available for them to go through their process and get all the right approvals, they can have the
Mhm.
ADU. This is not what they quote on their website. It says in as little as 6 months, but they can get it within a month, like in a month.
Yeah.
The fastest one is under a month.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Santa Clara is a little bit of a different process. It's not, they're going back and forth with Santa Clara right now, but I still had a lot of confidence that they could get this done by a day, I think day 135.
Okay.
Absolute deadline, but it'll be sooner than that.
Okay.
Um,
So let me pause you on there, Ian. Jacqueline, I see your question in the chat. I'll bring that up at the end. She had more questions about all the improvement exchanges. I got to get this one just for me, for Ryan. Thank you, Niners. You see what I mean? But okay, so you went with the Adobu. Permitting is pretty easy. They're standardized rules. They can fit under your timeline, which is super important. Before we dive more into the nitty gritty, I really want to know, what's the costs?
Yeah, so on the website, you can type in your zip code and you'll see the starting cost. It says $268K for the 1-bedroom.
Okay.
And to take it back to the numbers on the property that we sold, it was about 350K over what we replaced it with. We bought a 5-unit for 2.05 million. We sold for a little over 2.4.
Okay.
So we need to match the purchase price, but luckily the price we need to match is less commissions. The real estate
Gotcha.
was less. So we had a number in mind about what we needed to replace, how we needed to replace that value. Otherwise, we're subject to taxable boot, right? And it doesn't make the entire transaction taxable. It just makes that portion. It's almost like you withdrew 200K or 300K, and that part, it's not the worst thing to pay taxes on that part compared to what the entire transaction would be.
Yeah.
But obviously, you want to avoid it.
Hold on, pause. So since you're on that, actually, Jack, we'll bring up your question. Let's see here. Where did it go? Did you know about improvement exchanges before choosing it, or did you get advised with a lawyer or an attorney or accountant, or did you just really Google the heck out of this?
I bigger pockets the heck out of it, right? Dave Foster over on Bigger Pockets, he answers every single 1031 question. He talked about improvement exchanges.
Yeah.
And I knew that was an option. It was on our radar, but as we were looking for properties, we weren't specifically trying to do an improvement exchange. The fees are a little bit higher. We're budgeting 10K. It might be 6,500, but budgeting 10K for the fees, the administrative fees of doing a 1031 and them taking title, forming the LLC, and doing X, Y, and Z for you. But that was always on the table because I knew we're not strict on buying. I'm looking best deal available. I'm not looking, to overpay for anything. So yeah, that was a choice.
Right on. Well, that goes back to the first point where you don't need to know everything before you embark on a project, because there's always ways to figure it out along the way. And if you ask the right questions to the right people, you'll find the answer probably faster than you think.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is that this exact scenario, I talked to a number of different prefab ADU companies, and I was like, is this possible? And all of them had never done it, had never heard of it. They have done reverse exchanges, but they've never done it on that timeline. So Adobu was the one that was willing to take it on and told me, hey, these are the projects that we've done. This is our experience, and these are our relationships. This is why we have done things fast. We've done X number of projects in Santa Clara. So they detailed the timeline and why things took longer. And why this property would be a prime candidate and why we could get it done. And the truth is, if things aren't fully closed out, if it's work in construction, there's still going to be quite a large amount of the cost of the ADU that's going to go through the 1031 exchange and be tax deferred. There may be, I mean, if we're being realistic, there may be some costs that linger into early November that get billed afterwards, and that's fine. That'll come out of pocket. It's really not the end of the world. But to be able to do this onto a property is, we couldn't pass up the opportunity.
Gotcha. I mean, so we're talking about costs, and that's a lot of like, this is really interesting because you are now, like, as I'm thinking about, I know we all have, like, if you end up getting into real estate investing, there's problem properties. And I think about, like, how would I actually then build and buy my primary residence? I thought about this of like, okay, some of my problem properties in Columbus, could I then eventually in a year or two sell and 1031 all of that money? And that's basically, that's my starter money now for the primary house for my family. And so that is a thought process in the back of my head. And to know that you've done something like this is actually very helpful. Okay.
So you can 1031 into a primary, but you can 1031 into investment property and then later move into it. A book by it's a Rich Dad Poor Dad series, but the book is by Garrett Sutton. It's called Loopholes of Tax Real Estate. He talks about that. So that was another thing that I was thinking for my mom. And we're not going to go through this. And the current people right now are even trying to close the whole 1031 tax loophole. So this one is a little bit more of an aggressive position. So we're not going to do it. But what you can do with an investment property, one of the strategies is to 1031 it into two properties. Maybe one would be multifamily, one would be a single family home. Then you rent out that home for a year and a day. It has to be on two tax returns. So Garrett, he takes all the aggressive positions. He says rent it out for a year and a day. So it shows up on two tax returns and then you can move into it. That is something that some people do, but instead our approach is to cash, to 1031 is something that cash flows well so that you can use that income to pay for a mortgage and just keep what we have cash flowing, because we were able to, because it's a significant down payment because of the 31, it is actually a really nice cash flow on the entire property and a nice exit value. So we can go over the numbers of how much value an ADU adds to a property.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that for me. So now I know that I just need to do it sooner and then come back to it a year and 2 days later.
Yeah.
And I think Jacqueline likes it too. Wow. Okay. So the true costs, and this is always the fun part, is like, does this actually pencil out? So you obviously have some stock numbers that are on their website. This is all the 1 bedroom. There's base pricing that's an additional work that's not included. So that's obviously that'll vary depending on the lot and what's there. But I guess, how close are you to this expected work?
So I've got a few things going on. We got to upgrade all the electrical for all the other units. So there are other things going on with the property. So we like to budget these things conservatively. We can, if you'd like, we can do an underwriting of how much value an ADU adds to a property and kind of see what it is. Let's do like 320K because it'll be more.
Yeah.
This is a quote, but you always have to budget a little bit more, maybe.
Always.
10% more, right? So 10% of 290, we can underwrite it 320K. So if you're in the residential space, you value properties by comps, right? Once you get to 5 units plus, you're in the commercial space and things get valued entirely by the income approach, which is by the cap rate, the market cap rate. And in the Bay Area, cap rates are super compressed, right? You're seeing, I see properties selling the high 2 cap rate, which is absurd. But it's, in general, it might be 3.5%, 4%, but your price is a function of your.
You froze that on me, but he's talking about evaluating commercial real estate. As he froze in, this is really interesting to me, just simply because, and let me switch over to my screen here. Bloop. Simply because thinking about how we could also potentially do this is really fun. For those who don't know, there is a RV park that we are closing on in kind of the Branson, Missouri area. So we have that under contract. At the end of September, we're closing on that. There's a single family house. There is a 1,000 square foot warehouse, and there are 10 uh, RV parks on there. And there is a structure that's on there right now that's kind of used as a cottage, but we're probably going to tear that down. And I see Ian in the background. I see you. And so thinking about one, could I use this eventually for something here in the Bay? But is there a similar model that we can replicate in Branson on this RV park? Is really interesting. So now he's going to help me uncover what the numbers are. So, Ian, I'll bring you back in. Welcome back, man. Oh, you're muted now too, though.
Mute. Okay. I could see you and hear you perfectly, but I guess I
Mhm.
froze out. So
No, that's okay.
going back to valuing an ADU. So I'm not sure where I left off, so I'm going to rewind it a little bit. So
Yeah.
residential properties are valued based on comps, as you know. But once you get into the commercial space, it's using the income approach, which is using using cap rates to determine the value of the property. It's solely based on the net operating income. So cap rates, for a simple decision, for a simple explanation, is net operating income over purchase price. Or in another way of thinking about it is if you weren't to use any leverage on the property, what's your cash on cash return if you bought the whole property in cash? That way,
Yep.
it equalizes the property across different scenarios, right? So this is a 5-unit, and I was always underwriting properties. And I was looking at residential. If you add an ADU to a residential, it just kind of, there's appraisers don't, there are the rumors that appraisers don't fully count the value of the ADU and things like that. But when you look at a 5-unit and you start to add ADUs, the numbers start to make a lot more sense. Adobu told me they have a client who literally just buys multifamily and adds ADUs and then resells them. So people do that. Over at Saracon, there was a whole panel about, does investing in California still work? And there was a speaker on there who bought a single family and converted to a duplex and is adding 2 ADUs onto it. Then he's using the comps. Like I said, that one's not income approach, but he's using comps of 4plexes to estimate where you can reappraise at the end of that. So people do this kind of stuff.
I mean, this is basically which a Thatch New Wins approach, right? He's always like, don't buy this, buy that, but also add an ADU because you'll do, and that's just what people are. They're now also just using the speed of these prefabs to then increase.
Yep.
See, this is fun. Okay, so how can I actually run the numbers on this one?
So this is going to be. So let's go ahead and take the cost. So I'm just going to look at how much value does the ADU add? I'm not going to, it doesn't even matter what's going on with the 5 units. Does the value add equal?
So it's an existing 5-bedroom apartment, right?
It's a 5-unit apartment. Yeah. But let's not, because it'll get a little too complicated to do the whole underwriting of the whole property. If I did, I would probably share a spreadsheet and we work off of it. But
yeah,
looking at the value add piece, let's look at the purchase price of the ADU, and let's estimate that to be $320K.
Oh, ADU, so 320,000.
Yep.
That's too many zeros? Probably too many zeros. Okay.
320K. And then let's see, if you were to value the cash flow from the property, how much value does that add to the property? So let's say it's a 1-bedroom apartment. How much this also is location dependent, right? How much do you think a 1-bedroom rents for? I mean, we can pick, it's like pick your market, right?
Yeah, but a 1-bed in Santa Clara, for those who are watching this wherever you are, the Bay Area is just ridiculous. It's like Santa Clara?
CL.
Man, like when you like try to spell things like in public, it's like horrible. There we go. I mean, a 1-bedroom in Santa Clara, if you're looking at a luxury high-rise apartment, you're probably looking at like $3,500 a month. If it's a luxury high-rise. So I would, depending on obviously where you are and what, vintage the property is, you're looking at anywhere between 27 and 35, right?
Mm-hmm. So for this, it's a 1 bedroom, 500 square foot limits it, but it's brand new. It's really nice. You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really nice. And it depends exactly where within Santa Clara, but let's do 3,000
Okay.
for the underwriting.
That's per month, by the way, guys.
Per month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and annualize that. That's 36K
Okay.
a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Go ahead and working with you. Oh, not 36, 12. You said 36.
Yeah.
Okay, so 36K a year in gross, and that's just the value of adding the ADU. And
Yep.
what that adds to the overall income of this 5-unit apartment complex, which would be this 5-unit is how much? This existing 5-unit?
Oh, 2350 per unit.
Okay, per unit, and then times 5. So if I'm gonna make a different little row here, 350 equals this times 5. So we're looking at 1175 per month.
Yeah.
Okay, so 141.
Yep.
Gross.
About to value the whole property here. Okay, so from here you want to estimate the NOI based on the rent, right? So general rule that people say is a 50% expense ratio. And then from that number, you're going to divide by the cap rate. To be honest with you, in the Bay Area, the expense ratio is lower. I'm learning that in markets like Ohio, the expense ratio is higher. Or you still want to keep it at 50%, but in the Bay Area, these properties are going to be self-managed. So when I see the underwriting, the OMs for commercial multifamily in the Bay Area, a lot of the underwritings will say 35%, which is maybe a little bit aggressive. When I was doing it for my own records, I like to do 40% in the Bay Area because you're also not paying a property manager, and a PM is about 10%. But again, back to those back of the envelope rules, they really vary a lot. Don't think I was looking at properties in Cincinnati, and then when I actually got actual numbers, the expense ratios they can be pretty high, especially with high property taxes. But getting back to this conversation, expense ratio there, you're doing the expense ratio for the entire property.
So which is basically just as people are working through my spreadsheet, I basically took, if he was saying he's calculating 40%, I'm just taking what's 40% of the subtotal of $177,000 per year that he's grossing. So he's going to spend 70 grand on expenses. And then to figure out NOI, I'm guessing we're just subtracting that subtotal minus the expense ratio, right?
Yep.
And so then you're getting 106,200. And then you're multiplying this.
You divide by
dividing it.
Cap rate. So on my internal spreadsheet, I have a number of scenarios with different cap rates. I mean, I bought at this cap rate. If I want to exit at this cap rate, what would it be?
What numbers are you putting? What's your scenarios?
Oh yeah, let's try
3.5.
Try 3.5, 4, and 4.5.
All right. Add more rows. And also, I know some of you guys who are watching this, you guys' spreadsheet skills are probably way better than me.
We're doing this all super quick.
I know. Well, hey, you're the finance guy. Do you see this right here? 3.5%. Watch this. Come on. Oh, shit. So shame. Okay. Equals that divided by the cap rate. So that's how much it's worth at a 3 cap.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not going to work.
Cap rates they're not going to be 3 anymore.
Money sign in front. Look at that. See, not too bad.
Yeah, you got it.
Boom. No? What happened there? What did I do wrong? Fix my spreadsheet. Oh, it's not a percentage yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is now how much it is worth with an ADU, assuming all things are kosher, right?
Yeah.
So if we're trying to figure out what the impact is, so he bought, just for a kind of summary for the team here, you bought a 5-unit apartment complex. There is no ADU.
Yeah.
What's the fastest way to either increase the value of the property, right? Which is basically you want it to profit as much as possible so that the bank values the property more, and you can either sell it for higher and or cash out refi. So you can either increase the rents and fix up the units. You can either decrease the expenses somehow, some way, or in the Ian process here that he's trying to study, like other great people have done, can we just add another unit, which effectively could give you, what is that in percentage? Like 20% more automatically? That's the quick math?
Yeah, on the rent.
Yeah. Right?
Check on the yeah 20, a little over 20%, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So if he didn't have this one bedroom, if I delete this from it, let's just say at a 4 cap. Let's just play at a 4 cap. The property is worth $2.1 million. Not bad. If he adds this ADU and he gets it running, it is now worth 2.6. Yeah.
Yeah, that one doesn't. That's interesting because that one does not.
What am I missing here?
That does not add the value because of the cost to get the ADU up and running, right?
True. Well, this is just, well, I guess you have to factor that into the build out expenses, but then how long are you factoring that into the P&Ls? Like, what is the one-time rehab cost and how does that affect?
The rehab cost is, well, the cost is really just the price to get it together. So it went from, can you remove that
again?
Oh, 2.1 to 2.6. Yeah, that's adding 500K of value for something that's 320, right? So
yeah,
that is definitely adding value at that scenario. So yeah, it definitely does. Sorry, I totally got mixed up there.
It'll make it easier for you.
And then the way that I do it even is just only looking at the one bedroom standalone, because you could just do 36K times the expense ratio dividing by cap rate, and then see if that is more or less than the purchase price of the ADU, right? I just kind of, and that's just back of the envelope numbers, right? So
I like, okay, hold on. So let's break that down because that is a fun little piece. So you are taking the expense ratio still here, right? So if I'm going to, and then this is again, you gotta, if you're just jumping in now, once this gets posted, rewind 10 minutes as we built this out. Cause then we're just drawing on a whiteboard now. Okay. So if we're just taking the ADU now, 36,000, and then from here, we're doing the expense ratio, right? So it's that divided by 40%? No, multiplied.
Yeah, but it's really, and
then from there,
multiply by 0.6, or it's 36 minus 14,400.
Minus 14. Okay, and that gives you your NOI. So you can actually tell someone else how to analyze a deal if they can at least do this quick math.
So that's the added NOI from the property, and then you go ahead and divide that by the cap rate.
So I'm doing this divided by bang, and so at a 3 cap, that ADU is really worth 300 grand.
Yeah.
Right. Money sign, so it doesn't move. Yes. So, oh, come on! I have the suggested autofill.
So in all cases, it adds more than the cost of the 320, right? And you want to be conservative on your exit cap rate. So if you're buying at a, 4 cap, then you project that you're selling at a 4.5 cap. But even at a 4.5, it still makes sense, right?
This is fun. Okay, so one, I know we got like 5 minutes left before you got a break to go coach. But if anyone has followed along through the math, just let me know in the comments below that you're enjoying the math, just because that's a little fun. And if you're watching on Instagram, then you better jump on to YouTube after this to break down the math, because he basically just said, we're thinking at, I guess realistically, what are you thinking is the actual cap rate this could get evaluated at? Or what is it right now?
4, and then with this value add, it's more like 4.5 or 4.6, which is pretty high for the Bay Area. So if you were to sell it back at a 4% cap rate, you make some money out of it. But we're planning on holding, and who knows where the market is going to be later. So you always expect to exit it with a higher cap rate to be more conservative. So a higher cap rate translates to a lower selling price or purchase price. So you always have to predict for that, because we've been in, at the start of this year, it was very historically low cap rates that we were looking at. Yeah.
And now interest rates are a little more known, a little more scary. People get a little more dicey, right? Okay. So just to summarize for our folks at home, right? All of our friends who are following along, like, does this even make sense? Does adding an ADU to this specific property make sense? So in his sense, right, if we're looking at this super fun ADU that's here, and he's putting this on his 5-unit apartment complex that's in Santa Clara, again, just to like give the folks at home the tour, like, it's a cute, done for you. I'm sure this is the least stressed rehab. No offense, I've been chasing down my contractor for this flip forever. And this is now going to be way nicer than our flip in Columbus. And I'm sure as a hell a lot less headache. And you spent $320,000 building out this ADU on the unit. What Ian is saying now is that he spent all in $320 for this project. In a conservative scenario, it would potentially add $480,000. Subtract the cost, you're up $160,000.
Mm-hmm.
At 540, I can't. What is the quick math? 180.
Yeah.
So at either of these two scenarios, at the conservative level, he's up over $100,000 just on the project. Like, that's why adding an ADU is crazy. Kudos to you, man.
Happy to share the experience. And then you play around with all the different scenarios, the different exit cap rates, even the rent right there. Just play around with it because you can be more conservative, and you can go down the rabbit hole just tweaking different numbers on your model, see what's going on.
So that's, I mean, I like that a lot, man. That is thinking outside of the box. That is something that I'm highly, and thank you for walking through this, because again, like during our short intermission while you were resetting your computer, I was telling the folks that we have this it's a 1.5 acres. It's 10 RV parks or 10 RV sites with a single family house, 1,000 square foot warehouse. And there's a whole bunch of just already like leveled land. There is a cottage that's on it that is, in addition to that is basically just a tear down.
Yeah.
And so as I'm thinking about, I know that unfortunately they don't service Missouri, but what other companies can we use to potentially build other structures that can then just be also used as short-term rentals, mid-term rentals in that space that would also give me fun little bumps. So I appreciate you walking that through.
Oh yeah, I mean, Adobu is a great company to work with. Within Facebook is always a great resource to look at. There are two groups that I looked at because I went down the rabbit hole of trying to do stick built, even for my primary residence. There's How to ADU, which is run by Jennifer Krishner, who's an architect over in the Bay Area. And then there's SoCal ADU. Even though we're not in SoCal, there's a guy by the name of Jason Shao who was at Sarcon, part of our group that I just see a lot of his resources. So those two groups gave me a lot of knowledge if you guys are more interested in learning more about ADUs.
I like it. Well, we are at his time because he's got to go and coach some folks. But if you want to connect with Ian more, I have his Instagram linked down below. And so you can reach out. Ian, is there another way that people can find you?
Yeah, on Facebook. I found Facebook to be a good way of connecting with people. There's Instagram, but all my stuff is fitness on there. So yeah, you can find me on Facebook as well. I'm pretty active in some groups there if you already see me posting in there, but just search my name, Ian Cruz. What is my username? I think it might be.
While he finds his Facebook, for any of those who are watching, if you enjoyed this analysis piece, there's only been a couple of times that I've gone a little bit deeper in analysis, especially with guests. I've done that individually, but with guests, like this was really fun for me. If you found this fun, let me know in the comments, and so we can do more or even expand upon, because there's still 5 other units that he's planning to do things with on this property. So we have half the puzzle here.
Yeah.
And is there any last words of wisdom you want to leave for our group?
Yeah, I mean, if you're here, you're already in a good place because you're seeking knowledge, you're seeking to learn from guys like Joshua. The meetups help a lot. Hopefully I can come see you at an NVST meetup. Another meetup that I go to is Subtle Asian Real Estate, the SARE group. They have meetups all over the country. So they've been really instrumental in my growth, helping me with all these deals. So finding your local community, it's going to help a lot. And good luck to everyone.
I love it. Well, he already plugged it, so I'll plug it down there. investcapital.com/events. We're going to do a workshop and a potluck next. If you're watching this somewhat close to where we posted this, September 10th, 2022, it's going to be, I think, at Park Elizabeth in Fremont. Potluck. Bring the family. I'll bring my 2 kids. I'll probably be running around somewhere somehow, but also trying to chat with you folks. That'll be fun. Ian, man, thank you so much. That's crazy, man. You made at least $100,000 just on putting another unit there. I'm excited to do the follow-up. I'm excited to walk it when it's done. I'm going to ask you for that.
Of course. Yeah, excited to see you at your next event as well.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you, everyone. Connect with Ian. Ian, go out there, have fun coaching. We'll hit submit someday, but appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. See ya.
See ya. God, that was fun. If you enjoy that, let me know. Let me know what other topics you want me to bring on, whether you want me to analyze more deals, bring on different operators who are doing things differently. Super interesting to see that you can make $100,000 putting a prefab unit on an existing property. So I appreciate you all being here live. You guys are the best. If you guys made it this far, let me know. Give me like an ADU with like your favorite emoji next to it. So I'll do that right now first on my back end. The sunglass emoji. But I don't have it on the quick side. So boom. So comment below ADU with your favorite emoji. I appreciate you all. If you're thinking about building an ADU somewhere, somehow, and this has helped you at all, share this with whoever you're thinking about building with, and I will see you guys on the next one. Cheers, guys. Thanks.